Pistam Stapitam Vena Bhutale Swayam Rupapada Mahyam Dadhati Shapadhantate Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jatapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Pralijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lulita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Vanchal Patarubhyascha Kripa Sindho Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vashadi Gaur Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Occurs to me that if I move back, there's more space for everyone else. And so, let us move back.
Sure.
And then the cameras can move forward. Or back. Krishna, Krishna. And you could check your cell phones in this moment also. See that they're in silent mode, if you would. And this is Bhagavad-Gita 7:22. Satya Shataya Yuktas Tasya Radhanam Ihate Labhate Chatata Kaman Mayaiva Vihitan Hitan. Well, yes, we can read. You can read too. Someone else, Jay?
Satya Shadaya Yuktas
Adaya Sataya Yuktas
Tasyardanam Ihate
Satyadanam Iyate
Labhate Chatata Kaman
Labhate Tataha Kaman
Maya Eva Vihitan Hitan
Maya Eva Vihitan Hita.
Okay. Saha, he, Taya, with that, Shraddhaya, inspiration, Yuktaha, endowed, Tasya, of that demigod, Aradhanam, for the worship, Ihate, he aspires, Labhate, obtains, Sha, and Tataha, from that, Kaman, his desires, Maya, by me, Eva, alone, Vihitan, arranged, he, certainly, Tan, those. Endowed with such a faith, he endeavors to worship a particular demigod and obtains his desires. But in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone. It's good to have the context here. Starting with text 20, those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. I am in everyone's heart as the supersoul. As soon as one desires to worship some demigod, I make his faith steady so that he can devote himself to that particular deity. Endowed with such a faith, he endeavors to worship a particular demigod and obtains his desire. But in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone. Purport. The demigods cannot award benedictions to their devotees without the permission of the Supreme Lord. The living entity may forget that everything is the property of the Supreme Lord, but the demigods do not forget. So the worship of demigods and achievement of desired results are due not to the demigods, but to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by arrangement. The less intelligent living entity does not know this, and therefore he foolishly goes to the demigods for some benefit. But the pure devotee, when in need of something, prays only to the Supreme Lord. Asking for material benefit, however, is not a sign of a pure devotee. A living entity goes to the demigods usually because he's mad to fulfill his lust. This happens when something undue is desired by the living entity and the Lord himself does not fulfill the desire. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita it is said that one who worships the Supreme Lord and at the same time desires material enjoyment is contradictory in his desires. Devotional service to the Supreme Lord and the worship of a demigod cannot be on the same platform, because worship of a demigod is material and devotional service to the Supreme Lord is completely spiritual. For the living entity who desires to return to Godhead, material desires are impediments. A pure devotee of the Lord is therefore not awarded the material benefits desired by less intelligent living entities, who therefore prefer to worship demigods of the material world rather than engage in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. Krishna. Om Jnana Timirantasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadhati Shapadantikam Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Vitapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Shagrajatam Sahagana Nadanatan Vitam Stam Sajinam Sadvaitam Savadutam Pravishanam Sehitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakan Vitamstra He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Bodhi Priye Mancha Golpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindho Pyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this section concerns the worship of Anyadevata, the various deities described in the Vedic literature. In the West, we don't generally have that conception. And therefore I found it confusing as a child. There's God. How does he like sit on a throne with like a puppet master, arranging all the different affairs of this world, intervening here and there, keeping things going. The whole topic is quite vague. There's God. God is the Supreme Lord of the universe, but how does he manage? So the management structure, the organogram, is given in the Vedic literature. Natasya karyam karanam trividyate. The personality of Godhead doesn't have to do anything, but he has different energies which do everything according to his desire. And he has different assistants for the management of the universe, delegation of powers. Why should the Supreme Lord personally have to manage the rainfall and the sunshine and the this and that? There are various living beings who are given charge of those affairs. They're called demigods, and sometimes it's said there's 33 million, 33 crores. There's more than we can really count. And they're responsible for all the affairs of the universe, big or small. We may not see them. Just like there's someone in charge of the traffic lights. We have no idea who he is, where he's sitting. But someone is managing that there are fallback systems and whatever it is that's involved with traffic lights. I met some devotee who's in charge of tunnels, or the company that contracts the tunnels in someplace in Australia. Maybe it was Sydney or it was Brisbane. And we just drive through the tunnels, but he knows the whole story, on what schedule they replace the lights, and they renovate the lights to take care of a new kind of light, and they do this and they do that. We just drive through the tunnels, and tunnel's been there, and the tunnel goes on. But there's a whole company of people who are responsible to the government, because the government couldn't do it itself. But they're responsible to the government for running the tunnels. And in that company itself, there's so many employees, someone to look after the costing, someone to look after the this and that and the other thing. So the personality of Godhead has so many living beings who, they're working in a higher position. Somebody's got a job working for the government. Someone has a job working for the cosmic manifestation, the cosmic administration. How do you get that job? By pious activities. the living beings who lead very pure lives in the material world and who desire to have a high post, just as someone wants to be head of his class or head of the country. If someone wants to be in charge of the clouds and rain, someone wants to be in charge of the rivers, someone wants to be in charge of this. And so, all right, yes, you can do it. And then along with the position, typically, as we find everywhere, you get some perks. You get some, yes. So the demigods have all sorts of facilities, higher facilities for enjoyment, but they have very responsible positions. And part of it is that if somebody, suppose I become the demigod of what have you, then somebody worships me, well, all right, then I have to grant his desires. Yes, he's worshiping me, he wants a good wife, or he wants good money, or he wants good health, or he wants something along those lines. All right, it's my duty, I have to satisfy him. After all, he's worshipped me. It's my duty. And generally that's what goes on, is that people, here we don't see it as much, but in India you'll see that people are worshipping various deities for material boons. I remember when I was traveling in India, we visited one town, and the sort of leading person in the town, leading businessman in the town, owned a cinema which brought in good money. And he showed us his temple, and he had a big silver icon of Ganesh. Ganesh is one of those many deities, one of the most sought after, you can say. In Bombay there's a very prominent temple of Ganesh, and Maharashtra generally many. So it was clear that this Ganesh was his object of worship for prosperity. But Ganesh will kick out the obstacles to my financial progress, and I'll continue to make good money. And it was just straightforward. That's what I do. I worship Ganesh, and by the grace of Ganesh, I'm prosperous. And someone else has some other desire, a good husband, a good wife, good this, good that, children. So we find very often that people worship these gods for that. Kalmaistaistar, Krishna says, those who are motivated by material desires worship these deities. Just like sometimes here in America we don't usually try to worship deities to get their favor, but we bribe a government officer or slip something to the person who's in charge of giving contracts for the corporation that we want to do business with, or, in this way we sort of go around the system and offer something so that it will come back to us. And other such things go on. We have different ways that we don't just follow the system, we try to get ahead of the system by currying the favor of someone in a high post. So, for sense gratification. So in the Vedic system, this is allowed. One can worship these demigods for fulfillment of whichever desire it may be, and there's a list. For this, worship this one. For this, worship that one. In the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, you can find a list. But Krishna explains how it works, that when someone wants to worship a demigod, I'm in the heart of that person, and I make his faith strong. tasya achalam shraddham tameva viddhamyam. I give that person the strong faith, the steady faith to worship the demigod. You want to worship because we can't do anything independently. To worship we think that we're all independent, we can do as we like, but there are higher forces that govern everything. And if you want to worship a demigod, you need help to have strong faith and determination. Yes, I'll worship Ganesh, I'll worship Lord Shiva, I'll worship Saraswati, I'll worship. So where does that faith come from? Krishna. Krishna sees this person is keen on worshipping a particular deity. I'll help him. Yayatamam prapadyante. Krishna reciprocates this. What you want? Yeah, all right. And Satya Shraddhaya Yuktas, with that faith, Tasya Aradhana Mihate, he worships that demigod. Labhate Cha Tata Kaman, and he gets the result. It works. If we worship these deities, we may very well get the prosperity, the wife, the education, the health, whatever it is that we're desiring. But Krishna says, Maya eva vihitan hitan. Actually, it's arranged by me. I'm in the background. I'm giving him the faith to worship the deity. I'm directing the deity from within. Yes, you give this fellow or this girl what they want. I'm in the background arranging everything. The demigod can't act, I can't act independently, and the demigod can't act independently. Everything requires the permission or the sanction of Krishna. So, yeah. Therefore, Kritagana, Krishna says, those who are bereft of intelligence, deprived of intelligence, worship these deities, these demigods, because they could just come to me straight. Why are they wasting their time? Even in business affairs, let's cut out the middleman. But apart from that, by engaging in the service of Krishna, we revive our eternal relationship with the Supreme Truth. And by worshipping some demigod, we form a relationship with another conditioned soul who's more or less stuck in the same non-liberated situation that we're in. It's just they have a higher post. These positions, Indra, Chandra, generally they're posts. A living entity who's qualified and who has the aspiration can become Indra, can become Chandra, can become Varuna, can become one of these deities for some time. And then he bestows favors. He's thinking he's very exalted. It's possible. But he's a conditioned soul like us. Lord Shiva is in a special position. He's neither the Supreme Personality of Godhead nor a conditioned soul. But all the rest are conditioned souls like us, just in higher posts. So by establishing a relationship with those deities, we establish a temporary relationship which doesn't really confer ultimate benefit. It just gives us some temporary boon. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's recommended akama sarva kamo va moksha kamo dharati tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham para. Whether we're free from desires, or we desire liberation, or we desire something in this world, better to go directly to Krishna. Then we'll get the desire fulfilled, and we get the ultimate benefit in life. We get free from material existence and go back to Godhead, reviving our eternal relationship with Krishna. So Krishna says, well, if you're free from desires, you're a pure devotee, or you're full of desires, still, Shukadeva Goswami, it's better to engage in the service of Krishna. But there's a catch here. Prabhupada alludes to it in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The statement is there that Krishna says that if someone is engaging in worship of me for some material boon like that, then he's murka. Murka means foolish. He's foolish. Just like if, imagine, you go to, who's that big Ted Soros, is that his name, the big financier?
Soros.
Hmm?
George Soros.
George, okay. We're not friends. George Soros. You finally get an interview with Mr. Soros. Sir, if you could help me. Yes, what would you like? Could I have a handful of rice? Excuse me? Mataji, could you now put your phone on silent mode? Or off. Airplane mode is preferred. So Krishna says, if someone's worshipping me to get some paltry thing, then murka, he's a fool. Like approaching George Soros for a handful of rice. You approach Krishna, he can give you pure love, he can give you freedom from material existence, he can give you residence with him in the spiritual sky. But we go to him, sir, could I really need to get a new job, I really want to get replace my old car. I'm really desperate for a wife. I'm really desperate for this, that. So Krishna says, this person's a fool. He wants something which is not going to make him happy anyway. It'll, okay, now I got the car. Could I get the house next? Now I got the house. Can I get whatever comes after that? So Krishna says, a fool, murka. And Krishna says, but I'm not a fool. Ami Vigya, I'm very intelligent. So why should I give this fool something which will not satisfy him and will just have him coming around to me again and saying, thank you, could I now have this? So instead, I may take everything away from him so that he finally just surrenders to me and becomes happy. So those who know about this may be very hesitant to engage in the devotional service of Krishna. He may take away my toys. And so, but the demigods are a safe bet. They'll just give me what I ask for. The demigods give without consideration. And Krishna is considerate. he considers the benefit, the ultimate benefit of the person who's engaging in this service. No, I won't just, whatever they ask for, give. I'll arrange things in such a way that they actually become purified, they actually become happy, they actually attain the fulfillment of all desires. So therefore, from that point of view, although it may not immediately result in the snap granting of what we are asking for, ultimately it's better. We get full happiness, full satisfaction, and it's Brahma Sokyam Tvanantam. We get unlimited, eternal happiness on the platform of the soul, not just some temporary boon that is meant for the perishable senses of this body. Sometimes Krishna may give, but he may not, according to his own sweet will. But therefore it's said udarati, a person who's more intelligent, engages in the service of Krishna. Person who's more intelligent. And all right, I may or may not get, if Krishna thinks that it won't help me, he won't give it to me. If he thinks, all right, give it, he'll give it. But I'll get a much better result, much higher result. So let me engage in the service of Krishna. We can stop there and see what kind of questions there might be. And I wonder what kind. Yes.
Well, as you said, Shiva is not either
Yeah, Lord Shiva is not the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he's not an ordinary living entity.
What about Brahma?
Brahma is a living being like us. If you perform pious activities, if you perform all of your prescribed duties perfectly, flawlessly, for 100 births, you also can become Brahma. That's all you have to do. And if you make one mistake, the counter goes back to zero and you have to start again. Therefore, the more intelligent person, why do I want to be Brahma? Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, I'd rather be an insect in the home of a devotee. There'll be constant chanting of Hare Krishna, I'll get some prasadam. Yes.
You talked about Lord Ganesh, right?
Yes.
But we were taught that Ganesh is the first god that whenever you enter a temple that you have to pray to.
Yes.
So, like all the gods, I think when he's created, they give him the wish that he will be known as the first god that he will be prayed to, something like that. So
Yes. The tradition is in Hindu temples, of course there are some Hindu temples dedicated to Ganesh, Siddhavinayak temple, many. But other temples also, they'll have the form of Ganesh, and before worshipping the deity, the main deity in the temple, one worships Ganesh. And therefore even the idiom is current for beginning some activity with Sri Ganesh Karna, to begin the program.
Yeah.
So, yes, so this is the tradition. Because it's said that Ganesh removes obstacles. And he removes obstacles. So we want to worship a particular deity, or we want to perform some pious activity. So first we pray to Ganesh. So we also have no objection. If you want to pray to Ganesh, please engage me in the service of Krishna. Then it's all right. The gopis were worshipping Katyayani, one of the forms of Durga. O goddess, if you're pleased with our austerities and sacrifices, please let us have Krishna as our husband. So that kind of worship of the deities is accepted. You're a servant of Krishna, so please give me your blessings that I can be always engaged in Krishna's service. If we approach Ganesha or the other devatas in that mood, then it's accepted. Otherwise, the Vaishnavas generally approach Lord Nrsingadev for removal of obstacles. Prahlad Maharaj, all his obstacles, all his difficulties were easily removed by Lord Nrsingadev. So devotees, Vaishnavas generally approach Lord Nrsingadev. But anyone, even, yes, he wants to give us, whoever you are, please give us your blessings that we can be engaged in the service of Krishna. Dhruva Maharaj his brother was killed by one of the yakshas. And so Dhruva Maharaj as king was retaliating by just wiping out the yakshas, killing them like anything. And Kuvera therefore came to him along with Swayambhuva Manu to request him, please, just for one yaksha you're killing so many, please stop. And Dhruva Maharaj agreed, all right. And Kubera was very pleased, so he offered Dhruva benediction, whatever you like, you can ask. Now Kubera, as you know, is the treasurer of the demigods. Even there's a, what is it? Is it an investment company, Kubera? Because he's the treasurer of the demigods, and the demigods have so much, so the treasurer, that's a big treasury. So he offered Dhruva Maharaj, whatever you like, you can ask. So Dhruva Maharaj asked him, sir, please give your blessings that I can be fully engaged in the service of Krishna. So this is the spirit of the devotee. Yes?
My question is, in Krishna consciousness we learn about dovetailing.
Yes.
We might come and we have interest or attachment or desires and somehow we give it to Krishna. So still we might be praying to Krishna, we might pray, I might pray, like, please purify me, let me just engage in your service, and that's it. But in my heart I know I have attachments, I have desires, I have material things that are stuck in my head that I want. So how can I approach Krishna knowing that I have these things in my heart without...
Well, how do we approach Krishna? Oh, Krishna, just engage me in your service, when we also know that I want this, I want that, I want a little bit of fame, a little bit of whatever it might be. Yes. How we approach Krishna will be dependent on our advancement. Someone who's less advanced prays to Krishna. Krishna, I'm serving you, but still I have this desire, if you could do this for me, if you could do that for me. And someone who's more advanced prays, Krishna, I'm serving you, but I have this desire, if you could please help me get rid of this desire. So that depends on us. Either one, Krishna says, arti jigyasu gyani. A person who approaches me even for material desires is a, what is it? A pious person, a fortunate person. Sukrita. So either way, we can pray to Krishna, please, this is what's on my list, if you could help me out. This is the need of the day, if you could help me out. Or you could pray to Krishna, I've got this list, if you could please help me throw it out. He's more advanced. Is that okay? Yes.
Maharaj, I thought Janaki's question was excellent, and I wanted to ask you further, to comment further. I would say that I've always had the mood of asking Krishna to help me get rid of the list. And I feel that, and yet I feel like there are some devotees who maybe don't ask Krishna exactly to get rid of their entire list, but I feel like maybe they're more mature than I am in their Krishna consciousness. And
well, everyone has different strengths and different weaknesses, but on that particular item, one is the more mature devotee asks Krishna, please help me get rid of these things. Sometimes the devotee hedges his bets a little bit, or is sort of, not hedges his bets, but sort of has dual desires. So it's famous that St. Augustine prayed to God, "Oh Lord, give me chastity, but not yet." So it's a gradual process of purification of desires. Something else? Yes, Susie.
Raj, I was wondering, thank you for the class. When you come here on this place, what kind of memories come to your mind?
Oh, it depends what day I come and what's going on. Sometimes no memories, really, no particular memories. Sometimes other memories.
Could you share one?
Today, yeah, I'll share one. But this is not a 26-second Avenue memory. But you come to 26-second Avenue and remember Krishna or remember Prabhupada. So I just told that story about Dhruva Maharaj and Kubera, and I'm reminded of that because I was present in Vrindavan on one occasion with Srila Prabhupada. They'd recently opened the Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan, and attached to the temple was the guest house, Krishna Balaram guest house. And Prabhupada wanted the guest house to succeed. Now it's so successful, but back then it was something of a struggle to get it on its feet. And so Prabhupada wanted to have a nice restaurant there and a bank there for the convenience of the pilgrims. Now Vrindavan, in every street corner you can get everything, but back in those days it was more difficult to get anything done. So he wanted to have a bank in the guest house. For those who visited Prabhupada's room in Vrindavan, there's Prabhupada's room, and then attached to the room is Prabhupada's library. But that library wasn't originally part of Prabhupada's quarters. Where there's a door, there was a wall. And that room originally opened onto the guest house lobby, and that was the room that was set aside to be a bank. So the Punjab National Bank was given the concession to open a branch there, and which they did. And for the opening of the branch, the several bankers came from Mathura. And there was and they're dressed in their suits and ties and they're, proper bankers. And so there was an opening ceremony and Srila Prabhupada cut the ribbon and it was arranged that there would be some sweets distributed and Prabhupada opened the first account. And he sat with the bankers and was talking to them. And he told the whole story of Dhruva Maharaj, how Dhruva Maharaj had, how his brother had been killed by the Yakshas, how Dhruva was killing so many Yakshas, how Kubera came and asked him to stop, and how Dhruva Maharaj agreed, and then ultimately how Dhruva Maharaj asked him that, my dear Kubera, please just give me, let me always be engaged in the service of Krishna. So Prabhupada told this story, and then he said to the bankers, very seriously it seemed to me, so you're all representatives of Kubera, bankers. So please give me your blessing that I can always be engaged in the service of Krishna. Yes.
Maharaj, when I was growing up, I read a lot about I read a lot of Greek mythology. Read about gods with as described as we understood them, as worshipped maybe by Egyptians in ancient times or Romans. I was wondering.
Norse.
In Norse, right? So I was wondering if you might, your understanding, Maharaj, of the understanding or the teachings or the culture behind that, how that correlates with.
Well, that's a big subject, of course. What thinking the ancient Egyptians had is a little bit beyond my area of specialization. But it appears that, we're the most advanced people now, we know everything, but it appears that the ancient cultures had the understanding that everything behind the workings of the universe, there was personal intelligence. That things don't just happen automatically by the push and pull of impersonal atomic forces, that things don't just happen at random, but there's intelligent direction behind things. Which is why when I was a kid I thought the Greeks were more advanced. One of the reasons why they knew, if you read Greek literature and then you read what they ask you to read in school today, in modern literature, it's like, could we please go back? They were very advanced in mathematics and literature and philosophy and so many things. So it seems that these ancient cultures, you can add the Mayans also, the Incas, they understood that there are intelligent controllers behind the various forces of nature. And so they were worshipping these various deities. Of course, they'd be considered less intelligent according to Bhagavad-Gita, but not less intelligent than Hindus who do the same thing. But it appears that this understanding was all over the world, really. And of course, from Vedic literature, we take it that at one time the Vedic culture was spread throughout the world. And of course, when culture spread globally, then they take on local forms. So even like worship of Radha Govinda in Manipur is a little different from worship of Radha Govinda in Jaipur or someplace else. So it seems this Vedic culture was all over the world, and people understood that there are intelligent controllers behind the forces of nature. They may have conceived them differently, but this understanding was there. Sariputta Prabhu has written to some extent about this. But a civilization is considered truly advanced when it understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we just engage in the service of this controller, that controller, then we're considered Ritagana, deprived of the essence of knowledge.
One follow-up question. One thing that strikes me when you're talking about this is, so you're recognizing, Maharaj, you're explaining why people of all these various ancient cultures, that they had a heightened awareness compared to the average awareness of, say, modern culture, in the sense that they recognized there were beings who were intelligent, who were basically directing affairs of the universe or the planet. And so that makes me wonder, typically there's not so much talk, I don't know if it was there, but in all these different ancient cultures, as you said, but they're missing worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But yet in modern culture, for most persons from a Judeo-Christian background or etc., there's not, people generally don't think about, accept, contemplate this idea of demigods, and yet they have some conception of a supreme person, or at least a God with a capital G. So it sort of, so it makes me wonder, like, whose knowledge is superior? Practically speaking, I would tend to think the people with the ancient cultures, even without recognizing God with a capital G, maybe theirs is superior because at least what they believe and follow, it's like with a deeper understanding, because there's so many people who accept God today, but do they really accept God?
Yeah. So I don't want to, even when I teach in Mayapur, I teach on the condition that I don't have to grade papers. So I don't want to hand out grades and say, these people are higher than those people, those higher people, they get a 3.5, and these people get a 3.0, and all of that. But you've correctly pointed out that some people, they don't have so much understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but they're fairly well informed about how things work. And even in that case, they usually have some understanding. There is some Supreme God, but I'm devoted to this one. Or they think that God is ultimately impersonal. God has no form, God has no qualities, but God has no name, but he manifests himself in innumerable forms, and so I'll worship the form most attractive to me, and the one that attracts me is the one that gives money, or the one that gives good education, or the one that gives this or that. So they're described as kama, motivated by material desires. And they do have a conception of God, but it's impersonal, not specific. And so any God you choose is okay. In modern religion, often we find that we're devoted to God, but again, our conception of God is impersonal. God has no form, God has no no activities. God is beyond. He would be limited if he had activities. If he had a form, he would be limited. This would limit him, that would limit him. So we come to essentially the same conception. We have devotion to God, but who's God? Well, God is beyond description, God is beyond this, God is beyond that. So there's a correlation there. There's a correlation there. And yes. Or we think that God is, well, our order supplier. So, all right, that's appreciated. At least we're approaching the supreme order supplier rather than the subordinate order suppliers. Something good. So we're not against this religion or that religion, but we're here to give more information. We don't say don't be a Christian, don't be this, don't be that, but be informed what's going on here. That it's, first of all, that there's understand the science of God. What are God's energies? How is God working? Is he really just sitting on a throne like a puppeteer? Or I saw in one Christian tract, there's God sitting on a throne and he's majestic and he's usually wearing the usual Greek outfit, the toga sort of thing. And he has no face. And that means impersonal. Or we speculate, hey, he looks like an old man, he looks like, we don't really know. So we're giving, we're not saying don't worship God according to your religious conviction, but understand something more than you've understood so far. Yes.
We have quite a few people who are new to chanting and new to kirtan and stuff like that. And I'm just wondering if you can speak on the effect of chanting on material desires. How does chanting affect our material desires?
How does chanting affect our material desires? Well, one thing is if we chant and get absorbed in the chanting, then we forget about our material desires because we're absorbed in the chanting. And so often it's material desires that are pinching the heart or anyway, causing pain in the heart. Our minds are all, we're an anxiety or depression or whatever, all wound up in knots because of our desires. And so the doctor prescribes this or the psychiatrist prescribes that. But we offer a simple thing, just absorb your mind in chanting and your mind will be, purified and it'll be quiet, it'll stop for a while with all of its nagging and pushing and screaming and contortionism. It'll, mantra, the mind will be liberated from these things. At least while we're chanting, we're not obsessing over those things. And because the chanting is Krishna himself, because the chanting is on the transcendental platform, there'll be lasting purification. In short form, is that okay? Yes? Is that a question or is that
It's
just?
kind of a similar question,
Uh-huh.
but besides chanting, what may we do about negative thoughts?
What can we do about negative thoughts?
It seems like just chanting on top of your thoughts doesn't seem like the real solution.
No. Of course, the chanting is a cleansing process, so it's not just putting, overlaying our material thoughts with the sort of paint job of mantras, but it purifies the mind. But in terms of thoughts, is we can replace the negative ones with positive ones. Just, we go to this website, or we read this or that, and our mind, the news even, and our minds fill with negative thoughts. Or just, we don't do anything and the mind fills with negative thoughts. But when we read books like Bhagavad-Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, there's so much positive substance concerning Krishna that it can attract the mind and fill the mind with positive thoughts, or better than positive, because like thoughts of love, thoughts of confidence, these are positive thoughts. But absolute thoughts, thoughts concerning the ultimate truth in tangible, transcendental existence. So, if we want to get rid of negative thoughts, it's very hard. But if you think of something else, then those thoughts go to the side. Even I can replace one negative thought with another one. Instead of thinking of, this political thing, I can think of this entertainer, and now I forgot about the political thing. But if we think about the Supreme, if we think about the Absolute, if we think about the ultimate divinity, if we think about Krishna, then we forget about Maya or material illusions. Is that okay? Good question, thank you. What are my instructions?
We could do the kirtan now, Maharaj. Tulsi, you like to lead the kirtan? So show everyone Hare Krishna. So thank you for